Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Russ Harrison, Managing Director of IEEE-USA and also Director of Government Relations for IEEE-USA. And this is our first 2023 Congressional Visits Day training. First of two virtual training sessions that we'll be holding. The next session will be Monday, that is Monday the 27th at 3 o'clock Eastern, although all of these sessions will be recorded and available to any of you who cannot join us at that time. A couple things to note. First of all, I want to acknowledge the producer of these sessions, Jonathan Cho, my colleague here at IEEE-USA, who's in the background making sure this all works. And you should all have a chat or a comment section on your screen. Feel free to enter any questions you have as we go along into there. I will be rotating back to the questions at the end. And with that, we will get right into it. So here's where our Congressional Visits Day stands as of this morning. We have 98 participants, which is very good. A couple folks had to drop out, which is normal, but we have representatives from 26 states, which you will note is more than half of them, which is quite good. 73 unique congressional districts, 129 legislators we will be meeting with, just under 1/4 of Congress, which is fantastic. I've been doing these with IEEE-USA for about 20 years, and it still amazes me the geographic dispersion we get without even trying. Really, this is the envy of groups in Washington for these type of events. As of yesterday, we had 54 of our 129 meetings scheduled, which is about right. We're still more than a week out. Legislators don't like scheduling these meetings to the last minute, so we are on track to having, if not every single meeting, by the time you all get to Washington, at least almost every single meeting before April 4th. So a quick summary of what we're doing today. This is the what did I just get myself into training session. We're going to talk about what's going to happen at the CVD, what to expect at your meeting, how to navigate everything, and kind of get you set to understand how events will unfold. Monday's session will then be focused on policy. We're going to talk about what you're going to say, what we're going to talk about, what's going on Capitol Hill, all the policy details. And then Tuesday the 4th, starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll be putting it all together, going over everything again, answering questions, and giving you a chance to meet with your teammates prior to your Hill visits on Wednesday the 5th. All of which is very exciting, and we'll get right into it. We are doing this year's event again with a company called Soapbox Consulting. Soapbox is one of the premier Hill Day planning organizations in Washington. I've been working with Soapbox for about 23 years, and they do fantastic work. Soapbox's job is to handle all the logistics for you for your meetings. They are the team that is actually scheduling the meetings for us. They're doing that right now. And they will be providing you with a digital tool. It's not an app, it's a digital tool that will contain all of the information you need on the day of the fly-in to be successful. It will contain your schedule, which we'll go over in a minute, your entire team's schedule and contact information, your contacts on the Hill, the staffers you're going to be meeting with, their emails and phone numbers. All of our background material, almost all of our background material will be in there as references. They'll be providing technical support all day. And you will receive a personal login link on Wednesday of next week. We'll talk about that in just a second, to give you access to everything that you need. They'll also have a live help desk available all day on April 5th. And this has always been a challenge for us. Things happen at fly-ins, right? People get lost, meetings change, legislators get called away. And so we try to be flexible all day on April 5th. And you will have my cell phone number. You can call anytime you want, but I'm going to be in meetings too all day. The entire IEEE-USA government relations staff will be on Capitol Hill with you, but there's only 4 of us and there's 129 meetings and we're not going to be in most of them. And if I'm meeting with an IEEE team talking to a senator, I'm not going to take a phone call if you need help. Well, Soapbox will. You will be getting an email on Wednesday, and there's the name and link and an address that it will be from that will contain your personal link to your digital tool with your specific schedule. I'm highlighting this because you need to open that email. Please don't delete it, and check your spam file on Wednesday if you don't see it. We will be monitoring who opens that email and accesses the tool to make sure that everybody who signed up for the fly-in is in fact coming. If you can't make it to the fly-in, that's okay, but you need to let us know. And the sooner you do that, the better, because we don't like canceling meetings with legislators at the last minute. So please do click on that link and open up the tool as soon as you can on Wednesdays as a last minute check that you are in fact going to be attending. This is what the mobile tool looks like. It's very intuitive. It's a very simple system, but you can see it has your schedule, your teammates, all of our background information right there, a bunch of other tools that you can access to help you out. On Tuesday, the 4th, at our training session in Washington, there will be a representative from Soapbox there to answer any technical questions, but the system, it works fantastically well. And most importantly, you see down the bottom that link directly to their help desk. Should anything go wrong, just click on that, bring you right to a Soapbox expert that can work through the problem. It'll have your schedule, looks like this. In this format, it's a little hard to read. We'll talk about the schedule in more detail in a moment, but everything in one neat little place telling you where you need to be, when you need to be there, and who specifically you'll be meeting with. Also has a virtual, a map of Capitol Hill to help you get around. Talk more about that in a format that's easier to see on the internet in just a second. The point is that digital tool will have most of the questions that you need answered about how to do this. And it's going to be on your phone all day long, making it quite easy. Now, this is a copy of your schedule. It's going to look a little bit different in the virtual tool, but in this format, this is easier to read. This is actually from last year's CVD. And I want to highlight a couple things on here to help you understand what's going on. This is our second Maryland team for the large states, Maryland, Virginia, Texas, I think California. We have so many participants that we break you into a couple sub-teams. The reason for that is just logistics. For those of you who haven't done this before, you will be surprised at how small House offices are. Having a meeting with more than 6 people involved, is actually difficult. So if we have a team of 10 or 12 people coming from a state, I can't have you all in all of the House meetings. First of all, there's too many meetings, but also you just don't fit. So we break you up. So in the digital tool, you will see the names of all of your teammates, Raj, Rodolfo, and Ralinda in this particular case. You will also get their email addresses and phone numbers, their cell phone numbers. Those of you who haven't provided us with a cell phone, please do. This is why we need it. And then your schedule. Soapbox makes sure it all works, and you can make them to all of them. Soapbox is actually usually good about putting all the House meetings together and then all the Senate meetings together as well. You can see it's all laid out there nicely, including the names of the staffers that you're going to be meeting with. So this is a better picture of Capitol Hill. And for those of you who haven't been, Capitol Hill is actually very easy to navigate. The buildings are very large. It's not very crowded, so you can usually see all the places you would need to get to. And it's easy to get around. Plus, they're used to tourists. So everybody that works on Capitol Hill is accustomed to being asked questions. And there are lots of security guys around with very large guns who are more than happy to point you in the right direction. Little safety tip, don't sneak up on them. But as long as they see you coming, they're more than happy to point you where you need to go. So your meetings will be probably in the orientation of this map is to the compass. West is to the left, east is to the right, north to the top, south to the bottom. Right in the middle, we have the U.S. Capitol. It's a large building, white building with a big dome. You'll know it when you see it. And to the south are our three House office buildings, Cannon, Longworth, and Rayburn. Pardon me. Your House meetings will be in one of those three buildings. Little trick, the buildings are alphabetical starting at the top of the hill. Remember, this is Capitol Hill. It is, in fact, on a hill. Cannon, Longworth, Rayburn, all of the office rooms in these three buildings have 4 digits. Except Cannon, the first digit is 0. But every room in Cannon starts with a 0, so it's 3 digits. So if you have a meeting, a House meeting, that has 3 digits in the room number, you know it's in Cannon. I mean, your schedule will tell you the building, but just a heads up. Longworth, all the buildings start with 1. Rayburn, all the buildings start with 2. So it's easy to get around. There are also 3 Senate buildings at the north of the map here, Hart, Dirksen, and Russell, all in blue in our picture. Now, if you're paying close attention, you will notice that Hart and Dirksen actually look like the same building, which they kind of are. They are 2 separate office buildings, but they're attached, and you can actually just walk down a hall from one building into the other. They have different looks to them, but they're effectively the same building. Why do we say there are 3 buildings when in fact 2 of them are essentially the same building? Well, it's because this is Washington. The House needed 3 buildings to fit because there's 435 of them. So they built 3 buildings. Well, the Senate is as important as the House. So if the House gets 3 buildings, well, gosh darn it, so does the Senate. The problem is the obvious place to put the 3rd building is this space just to the west of the Russell building, which is a beautiful park. And the senators decided they didn't want to destroy the park, so they built 2 buildings together on one piece of property and called them 2 separate buildings, just to make it clear that you understand the Senate is as good as the House. But they're basically the same. A couple other things to note. If you look at the southwestern corner of the map, we have the Ford building. Ford building is used as kind of spillover from staff that didn't fit in the 3 other buildings. Every now and then we get a meeting down in Ford. It's unusual, but sometimes we do, and this is where it is if you do. You probably won't, but it's a little hard to find because it's tucked back behind the other buildings, and those big white strips there just to the east of Ford are actually the entranceway to a highway. So it's a little hard to find. But if you need Ford, that's where it is. Now, up here to the east, we have the Supreme Court. Has a nice museum if you have a little time and want to wander in. It's a cool building in general. We then have the 3 Library of Congress buildings, the Madison and Adams building, which are purely functional. And if you ever need to do research, you can just go in and use some space there. But the important one here for your purposes is the Jefferson building, which is directly across the street from the Capitol complex and is generally regarded as the most beautiful room in Washington, D.C. Excuse me, the most beautiful building in Washington, D.C. If you have some time on your schedule, an hour or so where you have nothing you need to do, I strongly recommend wandering into the Jefferson building. It's completely free. You just got to go through security. Just wander in and look around for a little bit and then come back out. If you have time to do the tour, it's worth it. It's a great building, absolutely beautiful. There's also this little green oval directly to the east of the Capitol building. That is the Capitol Visitor Center. It is underground, so it is a little hard to see. But if you wander in this place, you'll see the entranceway is very big. It's just down below the street level. So it's a little hard to see unless you're right on top of it. That's another nice place to wander if you have some time to kill. There is a cafeteria in the visitor center. I do not recommend eating there. It's not nearly as good as some of the other cafeterias I'll mention in a second. The botanical garden is nice. If you have some time, it is at the bottom of the hill. So if you go to the botanical garden to the west of the Capitol, you have to walk back uphill, which, maybe you want to do that, maybe you don't, but it's worth it if you want to take the time. There are 3 metro stations, that's our subway, that have access to Capitol Hill. Federal Center, which is to the south west of the Capitol, a little far away, unless you're going to the Ford building. Capitol South is directly south of the Capitol building, and it is the closest to the Capitol. And then Union Station, which is a little bit off this map. Union Station is the large train station in Washington. Big old Gothic building. It's very, very nice. And it's an easy walk from Union Station to the Senate office buildings. Used to be a bunch of restaurants and cute little shops in Union Center, Union Station, rather. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, COVID killed most of them off, so it's not quite as nice as it used to be, but it's still a good access point to Capitol Hill. Now, the buildings themselves are easy to get into. There are multiple entranceways to each building. The challenge is this: they're not all open, and which ones are open change. It's a security thing. The map in your Soapbox tool should tell you which doors are open on April 5th, but it's not 100% accurate because they change. When you get to your first building for your first meeting, the doors are generally at the corners. There are exceptions. Go to the building, start walking around, you'll find a door. There can be waits. You do have to go through security. It's like the airport. You don't have to take off your shoes, but everything has to go through an X-ray machine. So give yourself some time to get through. The good news is that once you're in one of the buildings, you don't necessarily have to leave again. All of the Senate buildings are connected by a tunnel in the basement, which is easy to find and easy to use. That is also where the food is, usually. There is a cafeteria in the Russell building. There's a cafeteria in the Dirksen Hart building, which are good. So if you're in the Senate for lunch, those are good places to eat. Ask someone how you get to them or just follow the signs. All of the office buildings are tourist friendly. And what I mean is, when you walk into one of these buildings, just past security, there is always a map someplace of the building. You will want to use those maps because finding your room is not easy. The room number, the first number of the room number, I should say the hundreds place of the room number, will tell you your floor. And once you get off the elevator, there's another map. Use the map because some of the buildings have really screwy room numberings, particularly the Rayburn building in the House. I've been doing this for 26 years. I still check the map in Rayburn to figure out where the room numbers are because they're so illogical. Or you can ask the security guys. They'll help too. So there's a tunnel connecting the Senate buildings. There is also a tunnel connecting the House buildings. You can use the tunnel without going through security, which makes travel easier. There is also a very nice cafeteria in the basement of the Longworth building, right in the middle on the Senate. And there are additional smaller restaurants scattered throughout the office buildings on the House side. There is, by the way, a tunnel that goes from the House side into the Capitol. Then there is a tunnel that in the basement of the Capitol that goes the entire length of the Capitol. And then another little mini subway system, actually, that goes from the Senate, from the Capitol building to the Senate office buildings. It used to be one of my favorite things to do in Washington, just to go into those tunnels and just watch, because everybody's down there. The legislators, media people, celebrities, generals, diplomats. It was a lot of fun. And now we can't. Because of security, you need a pass to get through there, and you don't have one of those. So I'm afraid you're going to have to walk between the House and the Senate and the Senate and the House. It's an easy walk. If you go through the Capitol grounds, which are open, it's very pretty this time of year, as long as it's not raining, but it will take you about 15 minutes, give or take. And you can grab a cab if you prefer not to walk. But if you're up to it, I do recommend walking right in front of the Capitol building because it looks pretty cool. And it's nice to get pictures there, particularly if it's nice out, which it should be at the moment. One more quick map. Our training on the 4th will be at the National Press Club, which is a historic building. And so it is easy to find. It's the top couple stories of a major building that is connected to the JW Marriott. And to find it, you go to this building, which is the White House, which is fairly easy to find because, you all know what it looks like. And just to the east of the White House is the National Press Club. The closest metro station is McPherson Square, which is directly north of the building. Okay. When you get your schedule, it will include the name of the staffer that you're meeting with. Most of our meetings will be with staff. Actually, next week and the following week are both recess weeks for Congress because of a bunch. We usually try not to schedule the CVD on top of a congressional recess. This year, the timing just didn't work. There's pros and cons to that. On the downside, we are going to get very few meetings with actual legislators. Excuse me. Most of your legislators are back home in their district. The good news is the staff have to work that day. Pardon me. The staff will be working that day. And there will be less pressure on their time because their boss isn't there, which means there's a good chance your meeting will be longer than usual and more substantive than usual, which is a good thing. On your schedule, it will list exactly the staffers that you will meet with. And after that will be an abbreviation, which is their title. And just to give you a quick sense of what these are, the titles from most senior to least senior, Chief of Staff, COS, obviously in charge of the entire office. Legislative Director serves directly beneath the Chief of Staff and is in charge of all the policy work done by the office. The Legislative Director is in charge of monitoring legislation, making sure the boss is thoroughly briefed on what's going on and all the other work that goes into passing legislation. Beneath the LD are the LAs, Legislative Assistants. They are the main policy staff in the office. There's one Chief of Staff, one Legislative Director, probably 5 or 6, depending on the office, Senate more, LAs. You might meet with the scheduler. They kind of fill in when other people are busy. And if you have a meeting with the actual legislator, the scheduler will probably be your contact. That's who you'll check in with. And then there are the LCs, where legislative correspondents. They are the junior policy making staff in the office. Important note on the LCs, actually all of the staff. Some of you may notice that some of these staff look like they are slightly younger than your grandchildren, which they may be. It is very important that we treat everybody on Capitol Hill the same way we would treat the member of Congress. In part because staff move around a lot on Capitol Hill and they move up quickly. But more importantly, the legislator and the more senior staff are going to ask whoever it is you meet with how to interpret your meeting. And if you were rude or condescending towards the kid that you were talking to, that will be reported. So one of the very few ways your meetings can go poorly is if you're rude to anybody in these offices. When you walk into the office for the first time to check in, there will be somebody sitting at the front desk. It will be tempting to treat that person as though they are a receptionist. They are not. Nobody uses receptionists on Capitol Hill. They don't have enough staff. It is possible that the person sitting at the front desk is the Chief of Staff because nobody else was available. So treat whoever you talk to as though they were the legislator, because part of the purpose of this is to build good relationships with everybody. So those are the abbreviations. Let's talk about your team for a second. Most of the teams this year are everybody from a given state. We're splattered all over the country, which is fantastic, which means our delegation from each individual state is relatively small, which is great. So normally your team will be your state. As I mentioned before, the larger states, we did break up into multiple teams. All of the participants from the big states will be in your Senate meeting. So we only have one meeting with the senators, well, 2 meetings from the 2 senators from California. But when it comes to the House meetings, you're going to break up. We can't, you all can't do 15 meetings a day. There just isn't time, and there's no space for us. So your specific team from the big states will be a subset of the total delegation of the state. There are a couple states where we only have one participant. We've grouped the states so you always have somebody backing you up. And that's an important thing on these meetings, particularly if you haven't done it before. There should be no time at which you are on your own. You should always have other IEEE members backing you up. And while we do have a lot of new participants this year, which is fantastic, we also have some very experienced veterans who understand Capitol Hill very well, who will be there as a resource all day long. Staff will be with you all day as well. but there just aren't enough of us to do all the meetings, so you should assume your meetings will be without staff. And if the staff are there, we're just going to be there to back you up anyway. You're going to do all the talking. Nobody wants to talk to the lobbyists. So the rule is you have to attend all of the meetings for people you vote for, because that's how we got the meeting. Legislators don't want to talk to people from other districts or other states, and they certainly don't want to talk to lobbyists. They want to talk to voters. So you are the reason we have the meeting. We ask you to attend all the meetings from your team, simply to back each other up. But meetings are always about the voter. So the voter should always be front and center at all the meetings. Everybody can talk, everybody should talk, but the meetings are always about the voters, which means you're going to need to prepare in advance. I said this Wednesday, 1 week before our meetings, you're going to get a list of your teammates. We hope that you interact at least by email to get to know each other. And then Tuesday night at our training, Tuesday afternoon, you'll have time, if you haven't already done so, to figure out who's going to say what and what you want to focus on and what major points you want to make to get yourself organized. Let's talk about what your meetings actually look like. If you've never done this before, you probably have kind of, thanks to Hollywood, a vision of how these meetings work. And it's probably wrong. These are typically, well, first of all, they are business meetings. These are not social calls. Part of the purpose of the CVD is to start to build relationships with legislators. But these are about the ask. We are going to these meetings to ask legislators to do something. And that is really the focal point of the meeting. And they're very direct, very blunt, and very brief. A typical Hill meeting will last about 15 minutes. If the staff start asking questions, it can go to 20 minutes. This is a recess, so I think you'll have more meetings that are a little bit longer than shorter, but you should assume you have 15 minutes to say everything you want to say, answer all the questions, and get out. Here's how to structure your meeting. First thing you want to do is introduce yourself. We'll talk about that more in just a second, but very brief. This is not your life story. This is who you are, where you are, what you do, and move on. Everybody should introduce themselves. Then a quick summary of what you're here to talk about, the main issues you want to discuss. And we're going to go through that a little bit today, more on Monday. And then the bulk of your meeting is on your asks. We want to talk to you about nuclear power. This is what I want you to do about it. We think nuclear power is essential for this country's electrical grid, and we think Congress should do these 3 things to encourage the construction, of more nuclear power plants and take these steps to deal with the waste. We'll go into the details later. But that's what the bulk of your meeting should be, the asks. What do we want Congress to do? Once you've delivered your asks, and again, be very blunt and direct with all this, the staff can ask you questions, which you should answer as long as they want to talk. This is where you got to kind of let the staffer lead. You don't want to overstay your welcome. They're very busy people, but if they're asking questions and engaged in a conversation, by all means, let them talk. But when you get the sense that the staff has gotten what they want out of the meeting, you say, thank you very much for your time, shake hands, get business cards, and get out. We don't linger. They are very, very busy. Some of these staff will have 10, 12 meetings like yours a day, plus their actual job. They don't have time to just chat. And you want to be respectful of their time. But that's it. 15 minutes. Get in, tell them who you are, what you want, answer questions, and get out. It's very direct and simple. To be successful, a couple things you got to do, a couple things you should do. First, you want to get to your meetings early. 5 minutes early is sufficient. I like to get to the room about 10 minutes early just to make sure I'm not late, and then linger outside till about 5 minutes early. As you will see, particularly in the House, the Senate has slightly bigger rooms, but in the House, there's literally no place to sit and wait. They don't really have a reception area. So you don't want to get there too early. You don't want to go in too early. But get there a little bit early, go in, whoever's at the front desk, introduce yourself. I'm here with the IEEE group. give them a business card. Always hand out business cards. And then they will ask you to wait. And you will say, of course, we don't mind waiting. And then the staff will be late because they're always late. And if your meeting is with a member of Congress, it is certain to be late because they're always running late. And that is fine with you because you have all the time in the world. So be patient, be flexible, and go with whatever happens. On your schedule, as I said, it will list the staff that you are going to meet with, except that's the staff that you will probably meet with. Congressional staff do not control their own schedules. Events control their schedules. So there is a chance you will meet with somebody else. That's fine. Just go with it. Whoever you meet with will be responsible for taking notes and telling the people you were supposed to meet with. Already mentioned treating everybody with respect. One of the very few ways this can go badly. If you forget what you're going to talk about, you forget all the data, all the arguments, all the examples you want to tell. That's not how a meeting goes badly. The staff, in fact, are very, very good at dealing with nervous voters. They'll walk you through the meeting, they'll help you do it, and that is perfectly fine, as long as you're not rude. Remember to stay focused in your meeting. It's easy to get sidetracked. It's easy to talk about other things. And, you should have a dialogue with the staff. And if they want to go in a different direction, that's okay. Just remember to bring it back to what you think is important before the meeting ends. This is a hard one. Make sure you make room for the staffer in your meetings. So here's what happens. You go into your meeting and you're a little nervous because you haven't done a lot of this. It's a new environment. It's a new thing. And when you're nervous, you're going to focus on what you want to say. You know what your part is. You know what the stories you want to tell. You know what the data you want to tell is. You know what the arguments are. And you've been working on them for a couple of days and you went over them over breakfast with your team and you know what's going to happen. And you're focused on that and you start telling your story. You start your pitch and you just roll right through it because it's important that you say what you came here to say, which is great unless the staffer wants to ask a question. This is not a big deal. It happens all the time in meetings, but try to pay attention to the staffer and allow them to interrupt you if they want to. It is actually the questions and the dialogue that is likely to be more impactful than your monologue, which is part of the meeting. There's nothing wrong with that. But if the staffer is particularly interested in one little piece of your argument or wants clarity on something, that's something that they're interested in. And it's something we want to encourage. So try to give space as you're presenting to let the staffer interrupt you. It is hard to do. And if you forget, it's not a big deal, but try. When you are asked questions, you want to respond honestly. And if the honest answer is, I don't know, but I'll find out, perfectly fine. No problem at all. What we don't want to do is guess or make things up. You are not a lobbyist. You are a voter. You are not expected to know what's going on with the legislation. You are not expected to know what's going on in the committees. You are not expected to have read the bills. We're going to talk about some of the bills, although not a lot. We're still pretty early in a new Congress. There aren't all that many out there at the moment. But if you don't know what a particular bill does, just say, I'm afraid I don't, but I can get back to you. After your meeting, you send me an email saying, hey, Russ, Dave in Congressman whoever's office just asked me this. Your staff, after the CVD, will find the answer, send it to you and your team so you can send it back to the staffer. That's what you pay us for. But you don't need to know everything going in. And I don't know is a perfectly fine answer. Be helpful. If they ask you to find something out, even if it has nothing to do with your meeting, we try to do that. If they ask you to explain technology to them, keeping in mind they don't have a STEM background, that is a wonderful thing to do. And if they want to chat, which does happen occasionally, go ahead and chat. Do not cut meeting 1 short to make sure you have time to get to meeting 2. If meeting 1 runs long, if the staff want to chat, or if it starts really late, it is acceptable to have one member of your team leave early to go to the other office to let them know that they're running late. But you don't have to shut the first one down to make the second one. Just tell the second office, we got held up by Congressman whoever. We're very sorry. we hope you can still accommodate us. Just be polite about it and be honest. Lastly, in your meetings, remember to ask. These are, as I said, business meetings. The legislator and his or her staff want to know what they can do to make you happy. Because if they can make you happy, you will vote for them. And that's really the point of the meeting from their perspective. What that means is, first of all, they want you to have a good experience. They want you to leave their office feeling good about your legislator. So these are not going to be contentious meetings. They're not going to be difficult meetings. If you are ineloquent, if you stumble over your words, you forget something, not a problem. They'll walk you through it, and you get do-overs if you mess something up. So that's not a problem. But they also want to know what you want. And so be blunt. We want you to support more nuclear power. We want you to fund the CHIPS Act. We want you to fund basic research. Just be direct about it. But remember to do it. What happens sometimes is you get into the chat and you start talking about technology and you start to have a really good dialogue, which is fantastic, but then you forget to do the ask, which I've seen happen with IEEE members on occasion. Not the end of the world. We can follow up, but try to remember. But here's the big one. The real difference between a good meeting and a very good meeting is local. I can get meetings, IEEE-USA can get meetings with anybody on Capitol Hill more or less anytime we want. I can tell them what's going on globally. I can tell them what's going on nationally. I can't tell them what's happening in Kansas because I don't know, but you do. The single most important piece of information to deliver to your legislators is how does this issue, impact our local community, our town, our city, our school, our company. Tying these asks, tying these issues back to your local community is gold to your legislator. And I can't help you do it because I don't know. But if you can find those anecdotes, those stories that explain why these issues are important to voters in the district or state, that's what changes a nice meeting into a great meeting. And it's something you need to think about between now and next Wednesday. Let's talk a little bit about how to introduce yourself. I've seen a lot of IEEE members get this wrong, which is not the end of the world, but we want to try to do it right. Like everything in your meeting, introduction should be direct, fast, and to the point. This is not a job interview. You do not need them to understand all your qualifications, and you do not need them to understand your professional work history. They do not care. What you want to do is very quickly define yourself on two criteria, just two, to the people you're meeting with, the legislator or the staff. The two criteria are where you live. That is the key piece of information in your introduction, just the town, but you want to establish right at the start that you are a voter. And the way you do that is by saying, I live in wherever it is you live. And now the legislator knows, okay, I can put this person on a map inside my district. Now I know that they're relevant. And then you want to tell them what kind of engineering you do. I'm a programmer. I'm an aerospace engineer. I work on the space shuttle or commercial jets or whatever it is you work on. Very quickly, using language that non-engineers understand, define your qualifications. What type of engineer are you? Not a lot of detail. Don't get into what computer programs you know because the staff probably have never heard of them. I'm a computer programmer. I work on financial systems for banks. Boom, there you go. That's all you need. Less than a minute, get to the point, move on. The more people are in the meeting, the tighter those introductions have to become. So your name, where you live, very quick definition of your career, and that's it. Keep it tight. All right, that's the beginning of your meeting. At the end of your meeting, you're going to follow up. The CVD should not be a one-time event. It should be the start of a process that helps build a relationship between you and the legislator and their staff. The way you do that is you have a good meeting, you come out, don't have to do this immediately, but send an email to the staff, later that afternoon, time when you're between meetings, or the next day after you get home, or on Thursday or Friday of that week. But that be before the end of the day on Friday. Quick little note. All it needs to say is, hey, staff or person that I met with, it was great to meet with you on Wednesday morning. I really appreciate you giving you some of your time. We talked about these 3 things. Here's the answer to the question you asked or the material you asked me to get for you. I look forward to keep continuing to work with you on these issues throughout the rest of the year. Then, this is now April, in June, in September, in October, following up with the same staffers. Hey, staffer I met with, I talked to you as part of the IEEE Congressional Visits Day back in April. We discussed these 3 things. Can you tell me if there's been any progress on CHIPS Act funding or whatever it is you want to talk about? This is simply to remind the staffer about your meeting, about your asks, and about you. They will usually get back to you. Staff are very, very busy. They get enormous quantities of emails, so they might miss it. But you want to just take the opportunity to politely remind them of the conversation and of any commitments that they gave to you, respectfully. So we want to follow up within the week, and then a month or 2 afterwards, and then later on in the year. By the way, congressional staff are almost never thanked by voters. Most people forget to do that. A simple note, thank you for your time. We really appreciated discussing these 3 things with you. 2 sentences, takes you 2 minutes to write, is actually a big deal because hardly anybody ever does it. There's a chance that we will not get all of our meetings. The last couple of years, Soapbox have gotten us 100% of the meetings. Before we used Soapbox, Bernadette used to get us 100% of the meetings. But every now and then, somebody just doesn't have time. It happens. Since you are doing these meetings in person, however, you can force the issue. And what I mean is, meetings, the offices are open to the public. You can simply look up, and there are charts of where every member works in the office buildings. Just go up and look. Find your member of Congress and just go to their office. Open the door, say, hey, listen, I'm in DC as part of IEEE's Congressional Visits Days. I know you guys didn't have time to meet with me. You're not trying to embarrass anybody. Be very respectful. I know you guys didn't have time with meeting with me. I know you're busy. I understand, but I wanted to stop by and say hi. Here's my card. I'd love to talk to you at some point. Quick, couple minutes, get out of the way. Sometimes when you do that, they will say, oh, wait a minute, let me grab Gail. Gail, do you have 2 minutes to meet with a voter? And you'll do an abbreviated version of the meeting. With IEEE, I'm an engineer from wherever it is you're from, and we were hoping to talk to you about these 3 things. Here's some material of the leave behind packet, which we'll talk about next time. Would love to talk to you when you have more time. And sometimes they won't have time, but you'll still leave your card. The card will get to the staffer that deals with our issues, and they'll feel a little bit bad about not meeting with you, which can only help us in the long run. What you don't want to do is go to meetings of legislators that you think are interesting. People you've seen in the news, the leadership. If you don't vote for them, you don't get a meeting. So don't just drop into random offices. But if you do vote for them, no problem at all stopping by. A quick summary of the issues that we're going to be talking about. And like I said, we're going to go into a lot more detail on Monday on this. But the 4 issues that we want to talk about, let's pause for a moment. I want to make it very clear that these are your meetings, not my meetings, not IEEE meetings, not your employer's meetings. What you talk about is what you want to talk about. And if you don't find these 4 issues compelling, I hope you find at least one of them compelling, but you should focus on the issues that you think are most important. And you should focus on the aspects of these issues that you think are the most important. In other words, you're not a lobbyist. You are not paid to represent somebody else's interest. You are here representing your interests, and that is exactly what you should do. Talk about the things you think are most important. However, we're going to brief you for these 4 issues just to prepare you. One is CHIPS Act funding. The CHIPS Act, large semiconductor manufacturing bill last year. Parts of it were paid for for the next 10 years. Parts of them weren't. The parts that weren't have to be renewed every year as part of the normal budget cycle. Excuse me. We want to ask them to do that. I think there is a moment, we have a political window opening to enact legislation expanding nuclear power in this country, which is a very good idea. And we want to tell the legislators that they should do that. The most important message there is we support you, because they already look like they want to do it, but you want to let them know you're behind them. We want to exercise caution on open access, that is, rules the administration is putting in place to make all federally funded research available to the public free of charge as soon as it is published, which creates some complications for IEEE and other publishing organizations with our publications and research products. We're not against open access, but we have some concerns about how they're doing it. And lastly, we want to support the research budget in the fiscal 2024 budget, which they've just started working on. So just a quick overview of the things we're going to talk about in more detail later. Training schedule. Again, this meeting is happening right now. The next session will be Monday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, recorded again, so you can watch it whenever it's convenient. We will then have our training session starting at 1 p.m. at the National Press Club to do last-minute organizing, go over the ask again. The details will probably change between Monday and the fly-in on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then all day, April 5th, you will be on Capitol Hill meeting with legislators. We will not meet as a group after we break on April 4th. The training session will run from 1 to about 4:30. There'll be time in there for you to meet with your team, and then we will have dinner provided starting at 5 o'clock on April 4th. April 5th, we won't see each other again. I mean, you'll bump into each other on the Hill, but we won't meet as a group. Those of you who are flying out the night of April 5th, if your flight is after 8 o'clock, you should have no problem getting to the airport in time, particularly if you're flying out of Reagan. If your flight is before 8 o'clock, please let me know so I can let the soapbox people know so they can schedule all of your meetings earlier in the day. The way these have worked in the past, and this is our first post-COVID meeting, so I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen, but if it's the same as it was in previous years, most of your meetings will be before lunch. The 9 to 10:30 slot is when a lot of staff like to get these meetings completed. The further along in the day we go, the fewer meetings will be scheduled, and most of the meetings will be over before 3 o'clock. But there's always that one that for whatever reason is at 6. If you have a 6 o'clock flight, we need to know that you need to be off the Hill by 4 o'clock to make your flight. Excuse me. Many of you are veteran travelers. You know how long it takes to get through airport security. Security at Reagan National is a little tighter than other airports because it is right next to the Capitol. So you got to give yourself a little bit of time. If you have a 6 o'clock flight out of Reagan, you have to be off the Hill by 4 o'clock to make your flight. If you're going to Dulles, that's a little bit outside the city, or BWI, which is a little bit further outside the city. You need to make sure you have time to get your flight. Just let us know and we can accommodate you. But most of you will be done lunch-ish. Once you're finished, take time to wander around the Hill, visit the Jefferson Building, visit the Supreme Court, wander around the Capitol. You can't actually go in the Capitol anymore, unfortunately, but you can wander through the office buildings all you want, and there's always interesting stuff to see going on Capitol Hill. All right, some other just random things that I want to mention before we go to questions. And I see we do have comments. If you have other questions, please enter them in and we'll get them all answered before we're done. If you are not an American citizen, you are more than welcome to participate and you will be welcome on Capitol Hill, but you want to be honest about it. You live in the district, but you are not yet an American citizen. The reality is they will assume that at some point you will be an American and you will vote. So they will treat you as though you're a voter. But we don't want to mislead anyone, so just be honest about it. Excuse me, can I join other meetings? You can attend any of the meetings with IEEE members that you want, so long as you go to your meetings. So you can't go to a meeting with somebody else's senator at the same time you're scheduled to meet with your representative. The voters have to go to the meetings. But if you want to jump in with another team, that's perfectly fine until we get to 6 IEEE members in a meeting. Once you get past 6, it's actually hard to fit everybody in some of the meeting rooms. So if you want to join the team from Missouri at one of their meetings, that's okay. If you want to join one of the California meetings, you probably aren't going to fit. So I just ask you to play it by ear and don't create a crowding problem. But if there's space, knock yourself out. No problem at all to back up your IEEE colleagues. We are accepting more registrations. If you go to the registration page, it is closed because we're not encouraging it. But if you have a friend, particularly if they're from your congressional district that wants to attend, just send their information to me and we'll get them on the list. The issue with registrations is it takes about a week to 10 days to get a meeting. And so at this point, getting additional meetings that we haven't already asked for is hard. And the closer we get to the date, the harder it will become. But adding extra voters to meetings we already have is easy. We can do that the day before if you want. And so if other people, friends and colleagues of you want to join, have them get in contact with me quickly. But yeah, we can probably accommodate them. If your spouse wants to come, if your kids want to come, they should do that. Just tell us so we can get them a name tag. But yeah, if you have middle school and high school kids, this is a fantastic opportunity for them. And Capitol Hill loves kids because they're easy to please. So if you want to bring your kid along, they are more than welcome. Just let us know so we can make them feel included. Can you get a copy of my slides? Absolutely. I intend to send these slides out to you as part of my next reminder for Monday's meeting, which means they'll probably go up Monday morning. And the recording will be on our CVD website where the registration page was. If not today, definitely by Monday. And anybody can get access to both these slides and these training videos. What if my company has a corporate government relations office or my university has an office of legislative activities, which they all do? You are not going to these meetings as representatives of your university or your company. Having said that, it might be wise to tip them off that you're doing this just so they know. The trick is, in many cases, we've seen when you tell your company or especially your university's office that you're doing this, they will try to give you a long list of things to say. You can do that if you want, but you don't have to. Don't let them tell you how to use your meeting. Just like I would never tell you what you have to say in the meetings, your university shouldn't either, and you should make it clear that these are your meetings and you're going to talk about what you want to talk about. But, you know, listening to what they have to say and accommodating them if you want to is not a bad idea. Last but not least, what do I wear? These are business meetings with some of the more powerful people on the planet. You should dress in business attire, suits and ties. If you do not like some of the people you're meeting with, remember that they are representatives of the American people, and we should dress and act respectfully, if not towards the particular member, then towards the people who sent them to Washington. The big exception, however, to the dress professionally rule is your shoes. You are going to do a lot of walking. You are going to do a lot of walking on hard surfaces. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you wearing sneakers to your meetings. Suit, tie, look very professional, comfy shoes. There is also nothing wrong with you wearing sneakers to walk between meetings and then putting on the fancy shoes just before you walk in the door. People do it all the time. I would suggest just wearing comfortable shoes the whole day, though. If you try to wear nice fancy shoes that hurt your feet before you get to lunch, you are going to be miserable. So don't do that. There's no need to. Nice suit, comfy shoes, you're in good shape. And that is it. That is a quick overview of what we're going to be doing, where you're going to find the information to do it, and how you need to prepare. Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern, we will be going over the asks in more detail. And then Tuesday, the 4th, starting at 1 o'clock, we'll go through this again very quickly, and we'll be able to have conversations about all the details. 2 things you need: my email address. You all should have it by now because you've heard from me multiple times, but my email is r.t.harrison@ieee.org. My office number is 202-530-8326. The office number will roll right to my cell phone. I will be giving you my cell phone number before the CVD so you can get in touch with me during the day, although I'm going to be hard to reach because I'm going to be in meetings with all of you guys. Soapbox will be available all day long. And with that, I'm going to move over to comments and scroll to the top. Junwei, no, jeans and t-shirt does not work. Remember, this is the United States Congress, the greatest deliberative body in world history and the representatives of the American people. We want to show them respect. If not the people involved, you don't have to respect them, although you should be polite to everybody. But we do want to dress up a little bit and wear business attire. Now, if you are a student and you do not have business attire, dress nice. Slacks and a nice button-up shirt is fine. The staff will probably be dressed in khakis and a nice shirt. But we want to look a little nicer if we can, with comfy shoes, of course. Bearded saint look. I don't know if the saint is really what I'm going for here, but thank you. The beard is a COVID. Figured if they're not forcing me to go to the office, they can't force me to shave either. You can bring a laptop, but don't. Certainly, if you have a laptop with you, it's not a problem. We don't want to use PowerPoints, though. This is a conversation, not a lecture. So you can have a cheat sheet. You can write out notes. You can have bullet points. And if you want to open up a laptop or a tablet that has notes for you to follow, not a problem at all. But we don't want to use PowerPoints. This is a conversation between you and the staff, and it should be a discussion between the two of you, not a lecture. So I would encourage you not to use a laptop, not to use a tablet, except maybe to kind of have some notes to help you go through the process. You're going to have some materials from us, some of which I'm going to send you over the weekend to help with that. But if you have to use a computer, go ahead and use a computer. The one thing you absolutely cannot do is record the meeting. That makes Capitol Hill people very nervous. And if you want to record it, we have to get a permission in advance, which we're not going to do. So if you want to have your laptop open, that's okay. Not ideal, but it's okay. But do not record the conversation. Brendan, if you or anybody's spouse wants to join you, you don't actually have to tell me. She can just show up. But if your spouse or children come to the training on Tuesday, we won't have a name tag for them unless you tell us. But, if that's not a big deal, no big deal. The congressional offices are not going to mind an extra person or two showing up, particularly if they're voters. And you're not going to be wearing your name tags on the Capitol Hill anyway. Name tags on Hill scream tourist, and that's not the image we're going for. So you're not going to have a name tag. But yeah, if family member wants to come, if a cousin or sibling, or they're welcome. Would love to have them. More is always better. Oh, Foz asks an excellent question. Parking. There isn't any. If you are driving into the district, you have to park at Union Station and walk over. There is no public parking on Capitol Hill for security purposes. Similarly, if you have luggage and you're flying out directly, you're going directly from Capitol Hill to the airport, you're going to have to bring your luggage with you. They do not allow us to store luggage on Capitol Hill. We used to be able to get a room on Capitol Hill and just said, just come by and drop your luggage off, do your thing, and we'll have somebody in the room to watch it. They don't allow it anymore. Having said that, there is nothing unusual with people walking around with luggage. People do what you're doing all the time, and they lug their luggage with them, and it's fine. But you can't store it anywhere. If you must store your luggage, you have to take it to Union Station, which is a train station. It's an Amtrak station, and they have little lockers there, and you can check it at Union Station. But other than that, you're going to have it with you the whole day. I know it's inconvenient, but that's just the way it is. Proposal for products related to the CHIPS Act. You can bring anything you want, but the congressional staff cannot help you get a grant. That's illegal. They can give you advice on where to go for help. They can give you advice on what agencies to approach, but they are not going to help you get a particular grant. And they're not going to help you develop a particular product. That gets into some ethical areas that we want to avoid. So you can do it, just don't expect a great response, and I would encourage you not to. Brendan, it is always nice to say good things about the staff to their bosses. That doesn't happen very often. And if it is appropriate, and if it is accurate, which it probably will be, writing Congressman whomever that you had a great meeting with their staff and you appreciate the great work that Stephen the kid did. Don't call him Stephen the kid, but that is always very nice. The thing is, though, that note is probably going to go to the chief of staff, not the legislator, him or herself, simply because the legislators get a lot of email and they don't see it. But it's a great idea. I recommend it. Yeah, Frederico, that's why you need to talk to your team ahead of time. If you have 5 people on your team and each one of you has 3 issues they want to talk about, you can't. You don't have time. Here's what you do. You talk ahead of time and say, okay, we got 7 minutes. We can do 3, maybe 4 things. Here's the 4 things we're going to do. Agree among yourself what the priorities are. Do that, and then follow up. Frederico, you have 3 things you want to talk about. You agree with your team. You're going to talk about your top priority. You talk about the top priority and said, I'm really concerned about I'm trying to think of an issue and drawing a blank. Creation of new national parks, something that has nothing to do with IEEE. Fine. You want to talk about the creation of new national parks. You say, I'm with IEEE, but I'm really worried about this. I'm also worried about solar power and K through 12 STEM education. I don't have time to talk about those issues with you today. May I send you an email? And the staffer will say, of course you can send me an email. And then you follow up with an email. Or you follow up with a meeting in the local office. Every legislator has offices in whatever the big town in their district is. Most of them have multiple meetings. Frederico, if you can't get everything done at this meeting, and you can't, there's nothing wrong with asking if you can set up a meeting in Cleveland or Topeka or wherever it is you're from later. Those meetings are really easy to set up. We can help you do it. And they tend to be longer because the district staff have more time. You can talk about whatever you want. This meeting is about making introductions and starting the conversation, but it is not about finishing the conversation. Keep it short, keep it tight. You only got a few minutes. And then have a second conversation and take as long as you want. The April 4th meeting will run from 1 till 4:30, depending on the conversation. We will then be in the room until 6:30, and dinner will be served at 5. We have to be out of the National Press Club at 6:30 because there's another event coming in, but there are places to meet nearby if you want to have conversations, or just go down and look at the monuments. The monuments are fantastic at night. But we will be at the National Press Club from 1 o'clock till 5:30, 6:30, depending on how much time you need. Yes, Brendan, the coffees. We have not at the moment heard about any coffee. Oh, let me explain. Legislators, particularly from the bigger states, Texas, California, used to have weekly coffees, and they are exactly what they sound like. The legislator got a room on Capitol Hill, they bought some cheap coffee, and they invited everybody from the state who happened to be in the district that day in for the coffee. The great thing about the coffees is the legislators were always there. And you only had about 2 minutes of their time, but you had 2 minutes to tell your senator anything they wanted to hear. COVID blew those apart, and we haven't seen them coming back yet. Having said that, I think legislators are waiting till voters start coming back, and we're seeing a lot of these Hill visits. And so I expect that we will hear about coffees, before we get to April 5th. We just haven't heard about them yet. As soon as we hear about the coffees, we will tell the CVD participants from those states when and where they are. And if you can make them, you don't need our help to go. You just tell the legislator and go. Soapbox will register them as part of the CVD if you want them to. But if it's, Tuesday morning and you happen to be here, go. If it's Thursday morning and you're still in the city, go. And we'll make sure that you're on the RSVP list to do that. It's a different dynamic than an office meeting, but still fantastically successful. And what usually we do is you get the coffee meeting with the senator, and then you have a regular meeting with the staff later in the day to go through the whole spiel. So at the moment, Brendan, I don't know if we're going to do those. I don't know if they're being done, but I suspect they will, and we'll start to see them soon. Thomas, there is street parking. There isn't a lot of it, and it's not near Capitol. It's not near the Capitol building. All the streets immediately around the Capitol building are secure, so you need a pass to park there. And I would not anticipate finding spaces in the public spots because they fill up really, really fast. If you're going to drive to Capitol Hill, park at Union Station. There's almost always parking there. It's an Amtrak station, big parking garage. It's not cheap, but it's not ridiculously expensive, and it's not a bad walk. So if you're going to park, you need to park at Union Station. Okay, I do not see more questions. If additional questions occur to you over the weekend, please email them to me. I can incorporate them in Monday's briefing at the end. And if not, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you all for volunteering for the CVD. I'm looking forward to seeing and meeting all of you. And until then, have a great weekend, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you Monday to do this again. Thank you very much.